You will, of course, remember my book, I Am C-3PO, The Inside Story, where the opening lines, which I know I can tell you without even looking, it was the best job I ever had, standing every night on stage with the orchestra. And here I am going to do it again. So I'm beyond excited.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file.
That doesn't sound too hard.
Boom! This is Making Tracks.
This is the way.
Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
I know these people. They are brutal. Does this look Jedi to you?
That's not how the Force works.
They'll never see it coming.
Count me in.
You're listening to Making Tracks, and a very special episode as we take the wonderful opportunity to sit down with Anthony Daniels. Anthony will soon be returning to his role as host of Star Wars in Concert for 4 concerts which take place at the Walt Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles on the 21st to the 24th of November 2024. We spoke all about past Star Wars in Concert events, his hopes for the forthcoming concerts, and much more besides. So here's myself and Anthony Daniels talking all about SWIC, that's the posh name for Star Wars in Concert, here on Making Tracks.
In a way, as I do say in the book, it changed my attitude to Star Wars because suddenly faced between 5 and 25,000 people a night, every night we did the concert, I got from the audience such a sense of affection and love for George Lucas's story and everybody involved that I realized very definitively I had never appreciated the movie the way everybody else can because they're not in it. It was an educational moment that I should have realized before, but what an opportunity to meet so many fans in one place. That was in huge arenas. Now we're at the astounding Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles that looks like, I don't know, it looks like origami done with silver paper. It's just magic. And of course, on the inside, it's a very classic music hall, beautifully, but it only holds, I think, about 2,600 people.
Right.
So it's going to be the smallest concerts I've done. On the other hand, the atmosphere will be great. There will, of course, be a screen showing, I think, 19 or 20 segments of film that speak to a particular subject. And gradually now I'm getting more and more videos coming in from Disney showing me the recut version. Some of them are identical to what we used before, but most of them have been tweaked, and John Williams has tweaked the music. And of course, one of the reasons we're doing SWIC 2, Star Wars in Concert 2, is because the other ones only did films 1 to 6.
Yeah.
Now we have the complete saga, 1 to 9. And this means that, of course, I've got a chunk of extra learning to do. But it also means, because I wasn't entirely clear in these sequels what was going on. They became more and more complicated. And this has given me the opportunity, with help from John Williams' department, Jamie, and of course Howard Rick Brofman, who is really responsible for much of the script, what actually happened, particularly, I have to say, in episode 9. I got a bit lost. And now, in short form, you have about 200 or 300 words describing the story of, where Ren came from, who she is or who she isn't, who Kylo Ren is, that the Emperor magically is brought back to life. And even I now understand the story. And I'm telling the story. And I feel really proud about it. It's a chunk of work because I'm trying to memorize it so I can talk to the audience directly. What can I say? It is such a joy to share this story. And before, we shared it across Canada, North America, Mexico, then right across Europe. Sometimes, and then in Japan, with, I have to say, subtitles, where an interesting thing happened that I didn't realize, but Japanese audiences, I thought I was doing something wrong because they didn't really react to each piece. They just sort of smattering of applause. Oh, God, this is dreadful. Absolutely the opposite. Apparently, Japanese people save it till you finish. Then they went crazy.
So this must be such a joy because, as you say, and we've said before on the topic, that it concisely put into place not only what you did, but what everything that was happening. So you had a better understanding, maybe that's a better way to put it, a better understanding of those 6 movies and that very tactile, in the room feel of, I'm explaining this to 10, 15, 20,000 people, 2,500 people, however many people it might be. And now you get the chance to kind of go back to where you were in 2009 when Musical Journey came out and you first launched with that. And now you can sort of tack on to that the 3 films you did most recently. What a joy. How did this all come about?
And possibly explain to other members of the audience who weren't entirely sure what was happening in the sequels. It came about with an email from Lynn Hale, who used to, of course, work for Lucasfilm, saying, would I be interested in reliving Star Wars in concert? To which I wrote back a one-word answer, yes, with a Y and a lot of E's and S's. And then Jamie Richardson, who works very closely with John Williams, together we have actually, they gave me the script, and when you look at it closely, I've used that word earlier on, so I need to find. I have been using the thesaurus a lot because, of course, as many fans know, the story kind of repeats itself in different ways. Here's yet another who's strong in the Force. So it's complicated because sometimes I'm very close to going back to what I said before. I did do that in one concert in America one night where I went back in another chapter. I paused, pulled myself together. And unfortunately, it was the night George Lucas was there at a private event.
I'm Brian Herring, BB-8 puppeteer, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. That'll learn you.
Star Wars is so well loved that, I'll be honest, people forgive all sorts of things. People forgive the little holes in the story. People, if I fluff on stage, they don't mind. It is a live performance, no safety net. This time, in this event, we don't have camera work on stage. It is, whereas before we had 7 cameras, video world, this is a cut down, refined performance, really in a way where you are concentrating on elements of the film. And I have been revisiting these segments as I don't remember this. So it's cut down, refined, but of course really is concentrating on John's music.
It must be so lovely though, because obviously you work on the films. I'm thinking specifically the 3 new ones. You've worked on these 3 films and come in, and 3PO has his place in the broader scheme of the story. And now doing something that you so clearly adored, you said you opened the book with the line about it was the best thing you ever did. So to be able to come back to that, what is it, 10, 12 years later since you've done it? I mean, your yes was unequivocal what in your relation to what you wrote back to Lynn. Definitely you were up for doing it. But was there any reticence? Was there any nerves? Were you very keen to get back in front of that live audience? Because that seems like a very key aspect of the whole performance.
I did not hesitate before I bashed the keyboard. She wrote back laughing. She said, I'll put you in touch with everybody. And no, absolutely. Overwhelmed joy. Because the show, as it was, I thought was too wonderful to just say. And often at a convention, people would say, I saw you in that concert you did in wherever. Are you going to do it again? And I've always said, no, sadly. And now I think a lot through the power of John Williams, who he's the most modest man, but I have been on stage with him when he has received absolute adulation from the audience. And I see him enjoy it in the way that he should, in the way that he knows his beloved, And to share his music, which I've always said is such a huge character within any of the films, as big as Darth Vader, as big as Luke Skywalker, whatever. Remembering, of course, as I say in the book, still available on Amazon, without his music, and I have seen segments when I'm working on the films, putting my voice back on, without his music, the story, the scenes absolutely lack substance. And it was an educational moment back in the early ones, Star Wars, that I saw it without the music, then with the music. As they say in the optician's surgery, better with, better without, better with, much better with.
You've got quite a history with Star Wars and orchestras and performances, because way back in the day, you did the first Star Wars concert. It was about 78, 79, where you were involved in that. And then obviously Musical Journey, which changed names to Star Wars in Concert. We've seen Star Wars go out with the big screen and the orchestra playing, the added extra bonus of your good self being there to present it and as the host, as our host for the evening, it did certainly lack something, as great as it always is to see Star Wars on the big screen.
It does slightly lack a storyteller. And one of the things in the film clip I showed you, in all of them, most of them, do have live film dialogue. They put in a special speaker system in LA to allow you to hear Ray speak and Harrison speak. And indeed, there's a whole episode pretty much about 3PO, so I'm chatting along and on stage watching myself. But right at the beginning, yes, the first thing I did with John Williams was as C-3PO to conduct the London Symphony Orchestra at the Albert Hall, and then shortly after that with the Boston Pops and John Williams. Also, at the same time, around that time, at some point, I did the Great Science Fiction Concert of America in Philadelphia, outside the museum there, with so many effects, lighting effects, fireworks, helicopters with lights. And that wasn't about Star Wars. That was playing all sorts of space music and so on. And then with Eric Kunsel, the late and an adorable Eric Kunsel, who was a master maestro, used to conduct at the White House events and all that kind of thing. I did a series of space concerts with him, and great joy, again, narrating. Of course, I'm there with these symphony orchestras all banging away at whatever instrument that they do, and I'm up close. I mean, not trumpets, you don't want to get close to, French horns too, trombone. The brass section is pretty frightening. You'd be surprised the size of the box of earplugs that's backstage that the orchestra stuff in their ears. And you will see now, most orchestras have plexiglass screens behind the violins so they don't lose their hearing. Brass people are, pushing it outwards so they don't hear it so much. But if you're in the receiving end of that, or even a piccolo, the tiniest, most brave instrument of the orchestra, even that can give you a bit of an ear piercing where you didn't want to. I almost feel like a musician. Maybe I'm playing my voice alongside, but my respect for people who not only can play the instrument, but they can play it with 89 other people who are all doing something different. All right, you've got 20 violins perhaps, and they're mostly doing the same thing. But then you've got the brass, or you've got the harp there twiddling away, or the piano just over here, the double bass throbbing away over there, the timpani, the percussion, and John Williams, of course, terrific with percussion, banging away behind you. And one person, in this case, Maestro Sarah Hicks, waving their arms around to good use, because you'll see them if you look carefully. They are just before time, they will point at the brass or the violas or whatever, say, you're coming up next. Whereas when I conducted, of course, as 3PO on the two occasions, I was waving my arms in time to the music. It looked good.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
So I've had a lot of fun working with orchestras, and the thrill of being present when John Williams has been looping, when dubbing the sessions, mostly in London, to see him, he's looking at a screen doing it to time, and the orchestra playing, and then he'll just pause them for a minute and say, just make a note there, that should be a different note or a different element of a note. It's a living piece of music as he does it. And of course, back on stage in LA and elsewhere, the conductor, Maestro Sarah Hicks, is conducting and in time, if you will, to these very carefully edited film sequences. So the orchestra are constrained at this point to play exactly, because she knows when that big explosion of a spaceship is going to happen. Yeah. She's got a green wipe that says, any second now, bang. And the orchestra have to go boom at the same time. And she, rather like a show jumper, she is holding them back, pushing them forward, back a bit. Yes, they all hit it at the same time. And the joy of that synchronicity is almost orgasmic, because I'm watching every night. And, back in the day, it didn't always happen because you got 90 people racing and they're not all getting this. And the concert itself is a living thing. And then with the live reaction of the audience, who, unless it's Japan, who kind of join in a bit. So I cannot tell you the shock of that. Yes. But normally people are laughing or shouting sometimes, and sometimes listening to me, the intensity of the silence frightening, because you think, oh God, they're all listening to me. I got to get this right.
You just said something there that made me think you've got this unique angle in the sense that you were there when Williams was performing it for some of the soundtracks, and now you're there as our host presenting it to us and detailing what's going on up on the screen. That's quite a unique relationship between the two experiences. There can't be many people who've had the chance to go out and do that. That's quite a treasure, isn't it?
And considering I'd probably actually never heard of John Williams back in 1975. Well, when did I meet him? 76? Yes, I met him in 78 when we did it.
Right.
When we did the concert. It's odd because he'd mostly been known for Jaws before that. As far as I remember, I could be completely wrong. And it was that extraordinary and memorable music that really tuned him in with George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. And now anybody that can grab him. His workload he's phenomenal. A joy to be on stage with. He really appreciates the way the audience appreciate his work. Yeah. And it is beyond clever. I long to ask him, and it's the stupidest question, I'm sure, how do you come up with these ideas and not copy somebody else's pop tune that might be in your head, but how you clear your brain and think of something like Schindler's List, for instance, or E.T., glorious tunes. Come back to the Star Wars theme. And yet, of course, the big sadness for me is George Lucas never asked John Williams to write a theme for C-3PO. That makes me a bit sad. Too late now.
It's a mission. You need to make it happen.
An encore, perhaps. So I am regularly now turning our living space here in London into stage right and stage left, and working out what angle my head is for the Death Star, which is upright, and Tatooine, of course, is over to the left there. And that is a way and Dagobah is kind of midsection over to the left. Because I have an audience pretty much 170 degrees around me. The end of the Los Angeles Concert Hall is where the screen is. So there, I would say 170 degrees, but it goes way back and up. Great sight lines. One way I try and remember the script is to physically, in my view, to position various elements. You get the idea. At a certain age, words don't go in quite like they used to.
What are your hopes for this? Because it's come back now after a protracted period of time and expanded to include the 9 now. And you have these 4 performances. It is 4 performances, isn't it?
It is 4. It's Thursday, Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, 2:00 matinee, which is very good, particularly for children and so on. What is my hope for it? Well, the crazy thing of the original SWIC, as we call it, if you're one of us, you call it SWIC, it's like a professional name for it, was that we toured with an orchestra. Not only an orchestra, but we had chefs, we had laundry machines, we had an entire catering thing, plus 2 crews, one that would go ahead and rig arenas with the lighting arrays and sound arrays, and the stage, which would be a floating stage that they'd build it somewhere else and bring it in after the lights had gone up. This is a much easier show. It's an orchestra with a projector, if you will. And I'm just saying this to anybody at Lucasfilm and Disney who hears this. Very easy to tour. We could take this places SWIC never been before. Spread the message, spread the gospel. Just saying, guys, I'm free. Well, not free, obviously.
No, I was going to say not free in that sense, no, of course. That is wonderful news, because when it came out before, it was such a joy to see it at the O2, and then I think I saw it in Birmingham about a week before I got married. It's a very fond memory of mine, so.
Isn't that great? I'd forgotten that we did it around England. Yes, France, Paris was hysterical because the audience reactions are different in each place. And at the end, or in the Darth Vader theme, boom, 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 there was this funny noise, and I couldn't work it out. And it turned out that a lot of the Parisian were banging their feet on the floor. They were stamping along with it, which gave it a very interesting acoustic. Somewhere in America, there was, I think, Grand Rapids, there was this strange noise. It turned out there was a monster rainstorm and it was smashing into the roof of the building. And that again was like slightly scary.
Hi, this is Neil Scanlon and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
In a live show, all sorts of things can happen. Yeah. One of the magic things that did happen somewhere was one night in the middle of the tour, I said to production, we arranged to have a standby safety mic, a handheld radio mic, just in case something goes wrong with the radio headset. And they said, oh yeah, it's down by Vision World. I said, what, about as far from me is possible in an emergency? Why don't we bring it from Video World up onto stage and actually put it near me, kind of out of sight, but it's within arm's reach. Oh, okay, so they did. Yeah. That night, my mic began to drop out, and then it did it again. I could feel the audience getting restive. So I thought, I went over, got my hello production could see I had it live in my hand, and we carried on from there. I swear it was the night I said, let's move the mic, that the other mic dropped out. The force screws up and then the force makes it better again. The other funny thing, of course, is even in a concert hall where you can make yourself heard, but it's not that easy. In an arena, my voice would go out through this headset like the voice of God, like I am the galaxy. And then, of course, they switch it off and suddenly disappeared, mini-me down here. It is a great feeling to be mic'd properly. One thing that won't happen in Los Angeles, because it's a proper concert hall built with a lot of problems. If you look up the history of it, as with the Albert Hall, there's all sorts of resonances and echoes that can happen, which you don't want. But now it's a perfect room to do this in. In an arena where I could be, 300 yards from the back wall, which often would be concrete or glass, I had to learn. You get a thing called slapback, which is my voice coming back at me 1, 2, 3 seconds later. There's somebody else talking in the room. Oh, it was me 3 seconds ago. And you have to tune that out. Rather like being a newsreader where they've got an earpiece and they're getting instructions from production whilst they're giving the news. That is patting your head and rubbing your tummy, Yeah. And that took practice, yes. Even somebody, which drove me crazy. At the time, I couldn't work out what the noises were because I'm quite near the front row of the front 20 rows of the audience, shall we say. Yeah. And there used to be this crinkle noise. Then I realized it was back in the day when people started to make water bottles of thin plastic. They used to be much thicker. But in trying to cut down on stuff, right, they made thin. Next time you open a bottle of water, listen to it crunch. So I'm filtering out these things as I'm trying to remember what I'm talking about. In the original thing, we had a sound system that the audience heard, which blasts outwards. But then the orchestra have a special sound system, which is inwards, which helps them in a big space to have a concert hall acoustic. And what I didn't realize, because I used to sing Leia's theme, I was la-laing away and coming around the back of the outer side of the orchestra, came back on stage. They were all falling apart with laughter because they could hear me with my terrible singing voice going la, la, la. And it cheered them up anyway. Be very careful when you're wearing a live mic.
I'm thrilled to bits it's come back. And I hope that your wish comes true and it does hit the road again. A lot of people won't have heard, as you say, the final 3 films with the full orchestra. Force Awakens has been out there with the big screen, but I don't think the other 2 have. So it'd be fantastic for that to happen. But I'm thrilled to bits for you because I know it means a lot to you. So it's fantastic to get such a treat.
Yes, it is a treat for me. It really is a treat. But don't tell them because otherwise they'll reduce my fee and go, you're doing it for fun.
Email radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for links to our social media feeds, Fanthatracks TV and Fanthatracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fanthatracks intro, Blues Harvest for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock UK time. Our weekly news show, Good Morning Tatooine, goes live Sundays at 9 o'clock UK time on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fanthatracks is absolutely free, so it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.